How does emotional intelligence help employees manage stress? Well, let's face it. There is an epidemic of stress in the workplace. And if we don't deal with the stress in the workplace, what's going to happen is that burnout rates are going to increase, turnover is going to increase, and that impacts the bottom line. But it doesn't have to be that way. Today, what I'd like to do is to go over the 4 components of emotional intelligence and see how each of those can be used to help us better manage stress on the job. Recently, I came across a study by the American Institute of Stress. Let me just read some of the findings from their latest research about stress and the workforce. They said in one generation, the amount of work we do has increased by 8%. That more than a third of workers are reporting that their jobs are harming their physical and emotional health. About 38% are feeling more pressure on the job this year than they did the previous year. And nearly 50% of workers say that they need help learning how to manage their stress. And so now, more than ever, it's critical that we learn how emotional intelligence can help us manage that stress. And today, I want to go through the 4 components of emotional intelligence and show you how it can impact and help you reduce stress on the job. And what's great about this is that our emotional intelligence is not fixed. It's something that grows and develops, and something that we can choose to develop each and every day. First component of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. Basically, it is the knowledge of what is happening within us. You know that question we always get, how are you feeling? Well, it's the ability to answer that. And when it comes to stress, it's the ability to notice the signs of stress in our body. So often, we are oblivious to the levels of stress that we are living with. But with self-awareness, we're able to read the signs of stress. We're able to see how it shows up in our body, the tensions. Now, it's not that all stress is bad, and it's not that we're seeking a world where there will be no stress, because stress also can help us be more productive. It can add a little bit of urgency and focus. However, it's the inability to have moments of de-stress, the ability to have moments where we're able to relax, the ability where that stress is not constant day in, day out, that truly impacts how we feel about our work and impacts our physical health that we mentioned at the beginning of this video. So self-awareness helps us, first of all, be able to read the signs in our body. Self-awareness also helps us to notice the moments that trigger us, that trigger even deeper fear or stress or anger, that adds to these emotional feelings that we have. The greater the knowledge we have of those particular emotional triggers, the greater our ability to deal with them as they happen. So people with high self-awareness are able to notice what is happening in their bodies, to notice the stress when it's getting out of control, and to notice what's happening and what's adding to that stress through their emotional triggers. The second component of emotional intelligence is self-management. And how does that help us deal with stress? Well, self-management takes some of that self-awareness, and then it adds to that self-awareness a toolkit. It helps us regulate some of those emotions. People with high self-management have a toolkit that they can choose. One of the images I like to use is on the golf course. Wherever your ball is lying, depending on the particular golf course, on the wind of that day, on the nuances of the greens, etc., you will choose a different tool, and that tool is called a golf club. And so it is with our emotional life. Depending on how we've been triggered, depending on the context of where we are, we might choose one tool over another to help us regulate that emotion. What are some of these tools? Well, one of them can be the simple act of stopping and breathing, helping us to slow down in the moment, helping us to recognize that we've been triggered, and helping us choose the best option. Second tool could be visualization. Perhaps we've been triggered. Perhaps it's a pattern that we've noticed. Perhaps it's a way that we've always acted with a certain behavior that we're trying to stop. Visualization can help us replace that pattern with a new way of behaving, so that when we are triggered, we now turn to a new behavior rather than repeating the behavior we've had time and time again. A third way is a simple exercise I like to call the 7-second reset. It's taking 7 seconds and trying to reset some of the stress and anxiety that's just happened because of a triggering moment. What is it? It's taking 1 second, and in that first second to ground our feet. And in the grounding of our feet, we begin to feel the physicality of our feet in our shoes. That simple act of physicality can take us away from some of the emotionality that we're feeling. Seconds 2, 3, and 4 is breathing in. And as we breathe in, we do a quick body scan, which helps us assess some of the tension and stress that we're carrying because of this moment. And then seconds 5, 6, and 7 is breathing out. And as we breathe out, to change our posture, to change how we're feeling, and perhaps to think about a different way of responding. These are the tools that help us manage some of the triggering moments and can help us deal with stress in the moment. The third component of emotional intelligence is social awareness, this awareness of others. And one of the things that we've learned about emotional intelligence is that there's such a thing as emotional contagion, that we spread our emotional lives all around us to people. We literally catch the emotions of other people. And so when an organization is under a lot of anxiety and stress, that stress can spread like wildfire. Part of it then can be a deliberate attempt to counteract some of that stress by planting a more positive attitude. Perhaps some happiness, some laughter, because what we also know is that the more positive the emotion, the quicker it tends to spread among the organization. So in other words, what we're trying to do is take some of this negative energy of stress and anxiety and change that and spread some more positivity around us. And finally, there's the fourth component, which is relationship management. Now, relationship management is really about managing those important relationships. And very often when it comes to areas of stress and strain in the work, we're talking about conflict. We're talking about speaking up. And so good relationship management can help us deal with conflict rather in a personal, destructive way, using conflict as an opportunity to debate ideas and to be dealt with constructively. It can also empower us to speak up. You know, very often there's situations in the workplace and what we've resigned ourselves to do is to say absolutely nothing. But the problem is in saying nothing that we begin to feel even more stress and strain. And so good relationship management can give us the impetus to speak and to communicate with clarity and to speak up with what's happening. So there you have it. 4 elements of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management. And all of those elements can help us to build up a wonderful approach to dealing with stress in the workplace, so that that stress is productive and that stress doesn't cause some of the horrible impacts that we're seeing from the research project I mentioned at the beginning. As I've said, it's pretty clear there is an epidemic of stress in our workplaces, but emotional intelligence helps us deal with that stress, helps us be able to manage the stress, not the stress managing us, not the feeling that it's out of control and nothing can be done. I therefore really encourage you to look at those 4 components of emotional intelligence, to maybe focus on one and to build that up and then move to the other. My suggestion is that you start at the very foundation, which is self-awareness. And there's another great video that I really want you to watch, which is 5 ways of dealing with our emotional triggers. If you watch that first video, it really helps you hone in on that first component, which is self-awareness and the element of emotional triggers, and gives you practical steps to deal with those triggers.